I have always believed that small acts of kindness can change someone's day, even their life. For as long as I could remember, my old neighbor, Mr. Aid, had lived alone. His house was at the end of our street, slightly hidden by tall trees and a garden that seemed to grow without much care. People in the neighborhood often whispered that he was lonely, but I never really thought about it until one afternoon. I was walking home from school when I saw him sitting on his porch, staring at nothing, just holding a cup of tea and sighing deeply. Something inside me clicked that day, and I decided that I would do something for him. I wanted to visit him. I wanted to sit with him, talk to him, and maybe, just maybe, make him feel a little less alone in a world that often seemed too busy to notice him. I had known Mr. Aid for as long as I could remember. He always greeted me with a smile when I passed by, sometimes waving from his porch, sometimes calling me over to share a story from his younger days, tales of adventures, mistakes, and laughter long past. He had always been kind, gentle, and patient, yet I had never truly spent time with him. I realized, with a twinge of regret, that I had waited far too long to truly connect with him. That day, I promised myself I wouldn't wait any longer. I would visit him. I would talk to him. And maybe, just maybe, I would cook him a meal, a small gesture, but one that would show him he mattered. My love for him was not the kind that sparkles in romance novels. It was quieter, steadier, and deeper, the kind of love that comes from caring for someone's happiness, their well-being, their simple joy. The next morning, I woke up with the sun streaming through my window, the world still quiet and calm. My heart thrummed with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. I tiptoed into the kitchen and stared at the counters, thinking about what I could cook. I wanted something simple, comforting, something that would warm him from the inside out. I considered a soup, perhaps a plate of rice with vegetables, but then my mind settled on a chicken stew with rice. I knew it would be filling, nourishing, and reminiscent of the meals he had always loved, the ones his mother might have made when he was young. I spent the morning chopping vegetables, rinsing the rice until the water ran clear, and preparing the chicken with care. The kitchen was filled with rich, savory aromas that made my stomach growl with anticipation. I stirred the pot slowly, tasting the broth, adjusting the seasoning, feeling a quiet pride swell inside me. This meal was more than food, it was a promise, a small token of care and thoughtfulness. By midday, everything was ready. I carefully packed the steaming stew into a container, folding the rice neatly on the side. I tied it securely and placed a small bouquet of flowers from my garden beside it, their colors bright and cheerful against the muted tones of his house. I wanted this visit to feel special, to say without words, someone cares about you. As I walked toward his house, my heart raced. Excitement danced with nervousness in my chest. What if he didn't want company? What if he had a bad day, or worse, what if he turned me away? I took a deep breath and pushed those doubts aside. Even if he didn't want to talk, I reminded myself, the act of showing up would mean something. Sometimes just being there is enough. When I reached his gate, I hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of the small gesture I was about to make. Then, summoning courage, I knocked. The sound echoed through the quiet street. There was a long pause, followed by his slow, familiar voice, soft yet strong in its own way, calling out, "Who's there?" "It's me, Amina," I replied, my voice gentle, my smile warm, stepping closer to the door. The door creaked open, revealing Mr. Aid standing there. He looked older than I remembered, his eyes carried a quiet weariness, his shoulders a slight stoop, but when they met mine, a small, genuine smile spread across his face, lighting up his tired features. "Amina, what brings you here?" His voice was warm, though tinged with a fragility I hadn't noticed before. "I wanted to visit you," I said, holding up the container and the bouquet of flowers. "I thought maybe we could have lunch together." His eyes softened as he looked at me, and he nodded slowly. "That's very thoughtful of you. Please, come in." The moment the door opened fully, I felt a quiet shift in the air, a mixture of relief, warmth, and the unspoken understanding that something beautiful was about to begin. As I stepped into his house, I noticed how quiet it was. There were pictures on the wall of people I didn't recognize, and the furniture seemed old but cared for. I placed the food on the table and set the flowers in a small vase. Mr. Aid washed his hands and joined me at the table. We ate slowly, And for the first time, I saw him truly smile while talking. He told me stories about his childhood, about the adventures he had when he was my age, about friends he had made and lost. I listened, fascinated by the life he had lived. I asked him questions, and he answered patiently, as if he had been waiting for someone to care enough to listen. After lunch, I helped him clean up the dishes. He tried to protest, but I insisted. As we washed and dried the plates, I noticed how lonely his house felt. I realized that even though he lived among people in our neighborhood, he had very few who truly cared for him. My heart ached for him, but I also felt happy that I could be that person for him, at least sometimes. Over the next few weeks, I made it a routine to visit him. Sometimes I cooked meals, other times we just sat on the porch and talked. I would bring stories from school, small gifts, or even just my company. Each visit made him smile a little brighter, and slowly, I saw a change in him. He seemed lighter, happier, more alive. I realized that sometimes, all someone needs is a friend who shows up, a friend who listens, a friend who cares enough to share their time. One rainy afternoon, I arrived at his house with a big umbrella and a basket of food. The rain poured heavily, making the streets slippery, but I didn't care. I wanted to be there with him. When I knocked on his door, he opened it and laughed softly at the sight of me drenched in rain. "You really didn't have to come in this weather," he said, shaking his head but smiling. "I know, but I wanted to," I replied, holding up the basket. "Besides, I made your favorite stew." He took me inside, and we settled near the fireplace. The rain tapped against the windows, creating a cozy atmosphere. We talked about everything: our dreams, our fears, our memories. He told me about a time he had been lost in a foreign city and how a stranger had helped him find his way. I shared my own stories, my hopes for the future, and my plans after school. For hours, we laughed and talked, and for hours, the loneliness seemed to vanish from his house. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, our bond grew in ways I hadn't imagined. What started as simple visits and shared meals became moments filled with laughter, stories, and quiet understanding. I noticed how Mr. Aid's eyes would light up when he talked about his youth, how his voice carried a certain warmth when he recalled adventures long past, and how he seemed to find comfort in just having someone beside him. Each visit, no matter how small, became a thread weaving our lives closer together. I began to understand that my presence mattered more than I had ever realized. It wasn't just about the food I brought or the chores I helped with, it was about showing up, being present, and listening without judgment. Mr. Aid taught me lessons that no school could ever offer: patience in the face of life's quiet struggles, resilience in the face of loneliness, and the simple, unspoken joy of giving without expecting anything in return. I learned that kindness wasn't measured in grand gestures, but in the small, thoughtful acts that fill a home with warmth: a freshly prepared meal, a shared laugh, or even a moment of silence together that says, "You are not alone." One evening, as the sky blazed with shades of orange, pink, and gold, casting long shadows across his garden, Mr. Aid turned to me with a gentle smile. "You have brought so much light into my life, Amina," he said softly, his voice tinged with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you enough." I shook my head, feeling a lump form in my throat. "You don't need to thank me," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "Seeing you happy, seeing you smile, that's enough for me." He reached out and held my hand briefly, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. In that small touch, I felt the depth of his gratitude, the connection we had built, and a quiet affirmation that even the simplest actions could ripple through someone's life in profound ways. In that moment, I understood a truth that stayed with me forever: life's greatest joys often come not from what we receive, but from the love, care, and attention we give to others. Years later, those days remain etched in my memory with striking clarity. I can still smell the rich aroma of the stew simmering on the stove, hear the soft patter of rain against the window as we shared stories, and feel the warmth of laughter that echoed through his quiet house. I learned that friendship and love are not merely words, they are living, breathing experiences made of time, attention, and genuine care. Even the smallest gestures, bringing a cup of tea, listening to someone's story, holding a hand in silence, can light up lives in ways we often underestimate. Though Mr. Aid is no longer with us, his presence lingers in my heart. His lessons continue to guide me as I visit other elderly neighbors, share meals, tell stories, and offer companionship wherever it is needed. Because I learned from him that no one should have to feel alone, and that love, even in its simplest form, has the power to change a life forever. And in sharing that love, we not only brighten the lives of others, we find a part of ourselves we might have never known existed.